All right, everybody, so we just finished a nice, healthy, delicious lunch. Glycogen stores, everything's moving in here. Everybody is sitting nice and relaxed and quiet. And so everything I say is just going to be completely, directly feeding your minds at the end of the day. So I am not from San Diego. A lot of folks ask me, where are you from? I say, well, San Diego, but I'm originally from New York City. And I'm just a skinny kid from the Bronx who decided the West Coast is the best coast. So everybody here in the West Coast, who is from here? Excellent. Much love to my East Coast folks, but I can't handle anything under 60 degrees anymore, all right? So what I want to do here today is really give you some practical frameworks on how to deal with monetizing AI. And I get really frustrated because there's a lot of potential, a lot of opportunity to leverage AI and the technology around it, but a lot of companies are losing their pricing power out of the gate. So they're introducing AI, they're probably not sure the strategy that they're trying to take forward. They're experimenting, which is good, but experimenting without any type of direction does lead to a lot of useless loops. And what I'm trying to do here today is give 3 different frameworks that are going to help you break through some of the common traps that we're seeing with monetizing AI. All right, so that's my promise today. At the very end of my last slide, I'm going to ask you if I kept my promise, and you can tell me direct. I love direct feedback. All right, so let's jump in. So my background here is I was the head of pricing for Vista Equity Partners. If you ever heard of Vista, they're one of the premier private equity firms out there investing in tech and B2B. And so I was the one that wrote all their playbooks and ran them with all their portfolio companies. Marketo was one of them, Tipco, MindBody, I can go on and on. But over 3.5 years running pricing for the entire firm. After doing that, started Pricing.io, just me by myself. We're about 25 folks now, so we're still boutique firm, only and hyper-focused in the B2B SaaS area, and we love what we do. So if you clock from my early days to now, we've done about 500 pricing and packaging projects, all in the tech space. And so I've seen a lot of patterns and a lot of things, and anti-patterns as well. But the idea here is I want to bring a lot of that knowledge forward to you today in 3 simple plays. So the first thing I'm going to do is talk a little bit about the shift. The shift is what is happening with AI. And I just had a conversation at lunch with someone, and we're talking about, hey, is AI really changing pricing? Like, is there a whole new dynamic around it? My perspective is that pricing is still pricing. You're still trying to capture value, exchange value in the best way you can. But I think AI is changing a lot of the rules of the game. I think there are different things you can do now with AI in the picture that you couldn't before. But a lot of the core techniques, the goal of good pricing, it's still there. It's still in the heart. So I'm going to talk about what this shift means, and especially for B2B SaaS companies. I'm going to give you 3 plays to avoid losing your pricing power. And if there's any time left, I'll take a few questions. Sounds good? All right. So the shift in pricing power is something that I noticed well before AI started coming along. So before my career was starting in the on-prem days. So my first product I ever launched was on top of the AS400. It's a mainframe system. Anybody know what AS400 is? Actually, a lot more people than I thought. So that's where I started. I built a securitization platform on top of it, and I had to price that. That was my first pricing project, all the way into where the cloud started coming, the mobile era, and I started noticing that you would pay for access initially, right? You would pay for just access to the system on-prem, install, then some sort of maintenance fee on top of that, 15, 20, 25%, and then that was it. That was it from there. But as you moved into the cloud, and as we moved into mobile, different types of monetization models started coming out. Subscription became the dominant form, but also usage started making its way in. And one of the big pioneers, Snowflake, was really, I think, one of the best examples of good infrastructure to monetize usage. Sam Lee was the head of pricing there for a long time. He was one of my mentees back at Vista. And I got to see a really interesting backseat into all of the changes they were making as they were implementing usage-based. And I will tell you this, it was very, very intentional from the start, all right? But taking that further, so activity becomes the main thing you're monetizing, and then there's action, now with AI. So you went from access to activity to action. So now the systems are doing more of the work. So instead of what humans do with systems, it's now about what systems are doing for humans. And that is the big shift I'm talking about here. But it really unlocks a lot of potential. So if you think about this chart, this is from Kyle Poyer. If you don't follow Kyle Poyer and Growth Unhinged, you really should. There's a lot of great content that Kyle puts together. This is one of my favorite slides. This one is if you look at from 0 to 30%, this is the percentage of economic value that your pricing model captures on average, okay? In the on-prem days, you were able to capture about 5% of your economic value. When subscription came along in the cloud, you capture about 10%, 10, 15%. That's usually where the 10x rule from Silicon Valley comes from. And then now, as work is being introduced, and now the systems are more responsible for the end value, you're able to capture a larger percentage of that, upwards to 20, 25, 30%. Very big opportunity, but it comes with some trade-offs. So first of all, unit economics get a lot messier. And here's the thing, right? In the SaaS world, we've sort of gotten used to unit economics a certain way, right? We look at predictable recurring revenue, ARR, okay? So predictable recurring revenue, one of the biggest measures in any SaaS business, but AI comes in and not all of that revenue is recurring or predictable, okay? Some of it is reoccurring, and that O matters quite a bit. But the idea here is as the more you move into usage and the more you move into outcomes and things like that, it starts to muddy the waters. You start seeing new metrics make its way, like contracted ARR, future ARR, annual order volume, or my favorite, WTARR, wishful thinking ARR, right? This is for the ones that they hope their pilots, beat that 95% fail rate and make it all the way to production. The professional services piece is also different. If you think about SaaS, and back when I was at Vista, we would always make sure that your services, you had enough margin to cover things, but the idea of services was really just to unlock more recurring revenue. That's really what it came down to. But here in the AI world, we're seeing a little bit of a shift. High margin, high value recurring services, almost the human as the premium coming into play, and using that as another mechanism to unlock revenue. But then you also see a huge focus on retention within the SaaS world. Retention was the name of the game. If you had problems with gross or net retention, your model needed to be retuned. But here in the AI world, retention is still important, but adoption should be getting a lot more attention. Again, referencing Adam's comment earlier about 95% of these pilots and POCs don't make it all the way to paid production. That's a big one there. So how do you get to production? How do you get paid? And how do you expand to the next use case? That's one of the biggest things around AI today. And then lastly, gross margins. The darling of SaaS. You get really nice, recurring, predictable gross margins, low 80s, maybe high 70s. And that's a great thing and a great business model. AI disrupts that a little bit, right? Working with one company with several agents, their margins range from 10% to like 70%. Different LLMs, different frequencies, different use cases, different problems. And so it's really difficult to see on a blended basis what is really going on. So you really have to break these things down. It's not about total units of value, it's about the value in the unit. It's a bit of a shift there, okay? So not only are unit economics getting a little bit messier, companies are really having a hard time making its way to production. And I took this study here because it was an interesting breakdown to see what was stopping companies from fully monetizing their AI. And you'll notice here the top two, cost-effective scaling, right? This is, does my LLM completely eat my margins as we scale and grow? Value quantification, am I really quantifying and measuring the right value and meeting it? And then, of course, you have your competitive and your compliance piece. I won't get too into those today. But the top two are pricing model related. So this is why I wanted to come here today and talk a little bit about how you can move that forward and avoid those pitfalls. And the pitfalls aren't just for the small startups. Bigger companies are also struggling and taking some challenge as well, right? So I'll start with Agentforce and Salesforce, who I know is coming up right after me. So I'll be nice, right? But the idea here is it's a little harder than it looks, right? And I think that the Salesforce team, again, preceding a little bit of their own session, is still figuring things out, learning, adjusting, and so on. They did the flex credits thing, which seemed to really take track, and things like that. But moving into a usage-based model is a lot harder than it looks, right? Cursor also made a big change. Cursor decided, hey, I'm going to change our policy around, caused a lot of confusion as to what's limited or what's unlimited, and really had to walk that back, do a lot of credits and adjustments and apologies for there. And then Jasper decided to take a big leap into usage base with word count. All right, hey, we're just going to charge everybody the amount of words, but they also received the backlash and had to pull back from that as well. And one of the key lessons here, if you're going to go usage, what I think is the right path, you don't want to charge for something that's going to discourage them to get in and start using the product. Think of Netflix. If Netflix were to charge you for every single show or every single viewing hour, I bet you would change your behavior. Maybe just a little, okay? So be very careful. Going to usage is the right path in many ways, but being very careful what you charge for is going to be the right differentiator between winning and losing, all right? So with that, with the messy unit economics, but the higher opportunity to capture value, with a lot of the barriers to getting into production, right, and a lot of folks struggling, what is one to do? Well, I wanted to break down the 3 biggest pitfalls in my hypothesis from what I've seen. And the idea here is I'm going to give you a framework for each one right now, okay? The first one is your value is probably framed too low as an AI product. It sounds a little weird me saying that because you've heard of stories of folks overcharging for their AI, getting a little bit too exuberant. But a lot of companies are leaving money on the table with how they're framing. I'm going to talk about that. I'm also going to talk about complexity. So complexity in your packaging. What do I get access to? What do I don't get access to? Very confusing for a lot of folks. And then lastly, charging for the wrong thing. That's probably the biggest one of all. I'm going to spend a little bit more time there. But I'm going to jump into each one of these together. I'm going to give you a lot of tools and ways to think about it right now. Okay, so for the first one here, where your value is framed too low, I say sell the help, but not the hype. AI has a lot of hype around it still. I think it's coming down, but the idea here is you want to make sure that you're selling the full business benefit at the end of the day. So this is a quick study. It's a glimpse from Irrational Labs. Irrational Labs measured the blue bar, which is AI labeling, and the red bar is without AI labeling. And what they were measuring is, does the AI label impact willingness to pay, and does it impact trust? And what you'll see here is not a statistically significant difference between the two. In fact, in trust, it was a little bit, when you mentioned AI, it was a little bit more like skepticism. For folks hearing about hallucinations and things like that, you have to win them over. But the idea is not just about AI. AI, in and of itself, is really worthless. It's really what you do with it to apply it to a business problem that leads to a tangible benefit. That's what folks really want. So any marketing folks in here, I would move away from just splattering AI all over your website or your decks and actually start really getting crisp and articulate on the business problem that you're solving. All right, so AI, ultimately speaking, just skipped here. AI, ultimately speaking, is going to be one of those major, I would say, redefining how we do work. And it's going to also redefine how workflows come together. But it's not meeting its promise yet. It's underperforming by about 40%. So this is a study from a writer who did an enterprise AI adoption survey. And what they found is that it's about a 40% on average gap between the importance and the performance, right? And so you'll see it across all categories here on this chart. And pay very close attention to the ones on the bottom here, right, which are customization options, being able to understand and apply to their workflow, their specific businesses, and accuracy and reliability. So yes, the AI actually has to work. So when I think about how are folks framing the value of AI, I hear time savings, right? And raise your hand if you use time savings in AI. And the idea is not to shame you. That's a fantastic place to start, right? Time savings is okay. Most folks don't buy software to spend more time doing things, right? So the idea is you want to have a strong, compelling time savings, but that is not enough. That's where you have to move beyond that. This is a chart of the amount of influence towards customer loyalty and willingness to pay. And you notice that time savings is not on the top of that chart. Product quality is number one. It's got to work as advertised. Expertise, especially in my vertical or in my business or with my customer. Responsiveness, we need to move to a new use case. We need to pivot. Those are the 3 biggest things that I don't see enough when I'm hearing about the value of AI and the framing. So time savings, how do I help you sort of break out of the time savings and think about other ways to frame your value? So here's the first framework. I call it REAL. R-E-A-L. And the idea behind Reel, I have a whole worksheet behind this. If you want it, just DM me on LinkedIn and I'll happily send it to you. But it's about revenue, expense, avoidance, and lift. And let me break this down very quickly here. So on the revenue side, when companies are looking to adopt AI, they're not just looking to save time and labor, which is fine. They want to save time and labor, and they want to increase sales and acceleration there as well. So they want both. And that's one of the biggest alluring things about AI. So on the revenue side is, can this AI help me win more, grow more, or keep more of my customers? Okay? And ChargeFlow does this really nicely where they talk about the amount of time savings in managing chargebacks, but they also talk about the 30 to 40% increase in conversions and sales and things like that that leads to. Another sales enablement platform, right? Your sales rep saves 6 hours a month, but guess what they do with that 6 hours a month? They turn around and do more sales, right? So you want to be able to capture all that value. So on the revenue side, win more, grow more, keep more. On the expense side, we know that pretty well. But it's not about just hours saved. What happens when you save that much time? What happens when you're that much faster and ahead of the competition? So the framing of it in more of a competitive advantage will get you further than just hours saved. The avoidance part is typically overlooked. Avoiding new spend into the bloodstream. If I want to move into this new TAM, move into this new market, I need to buy this, procure that, expand this, but AI could be a really big door opener without the incurring expense. It could also be avoiding risk and penalties as well. And then you have the lift, and this one I'm subtracting the lift. So you want to add revenue, expense, avoidance. That's your value on the top, minus the lift, speed, friction, and effort for the customers to adopt and get to the value, time to value, all right? And companies out there, the reason why I want to point this out is because if you've worked really hard to take your AI adoption and your implementation cycle from 2 months to 2 weeks, you should be revisiting your pricing power. The idea here is that the longer it takes for someone to get to value, the less of it you can capture. But if you bring that cycle down, the opposite is also true. The quicker to value, the more you can capture. Something that is commonly overlooked that I want to bring and shine a flashlight on today. All right? First framework of the day, Reel, R-E-A-L. The concept is pretty straightforward. If you want more, DM me later. All right, you ready for the next one? So this is all around packaging and getting a little bit overly complex with the packaging. And I call this the T's, Please, and C's. I learned this from Shark Tank a long time ago, and I love the simplicity of it, right? Being able to tease the AI, give them some credits or some requests or a little taste of the action, and then use that as a lever to bring them a little deeper. Companies are getting much better at it, but not all of them. There's still a huge opportunity. So let me give you the spectrum of structure real quick, all right? So this is the 5 most common structures in SaaS today, right? You have your all-in-one, all the way to your a la carte, right? Your unique use cases, like LinkedIn does a great job of that, recruiters versus sellers, good, better, best, the one in the middle, most common, you've seen it out there, gold, bronze, silver, gold, those kind of things. Core and more, actually quite effective, right? Where you're able to, everyone starts from the same base of the platform, but they grow in different ways. Almost like Lego blocks, right? You have a base block and then you can build on top of it. And then you have your a la carte, AWS, Datadog, a lot of infrastructure falls over there. The big idea here is that now you have to figure out how do you layer AI into all this, right? Depending on your structure, where does it fall in? And I've seen some companies say, well, I think we need to be an add-on, or maybe we should just sell it a la carte, standalone. What should we do? So I came up with a framework that is really driven based on the experience of AI and how that's changing the overall platform, okay? The idea behind this is that fragmentation is everywhere. When folks are experimenting, they're not quite sure what to do. And so those that copy the other folks are also not sure what to do. And I admit it, in the tech industry, we suffer from a little copy-paste syndrome. We'll take someone else's model, copy it, and paste it right into our business. Sometimes it works, many times it doesn't. But you'll see here, incorporating AI into packages without even charging for it. Not because they don't want to, they just don't know how yet, right? Then you have AI as a premium with additional cost, a full add-on, all the way down to we're just not sure what to do. So it's a little bit all over the place. So what do you do? How do you guide your teams to figure out what to implement, what not to implement? So I came up with this experience-driven packaging AI, and it's very straightforward. You underscore the core, you upgrade the more, and you unlock the new. All right, I'll say that again. Underscore the core, upgrade the more, and unlock the new. So if you're just building around your core experience, you're just doing the same things, but a little faster, a little smarter, then you do want to incorporate it into all your plans, into the base. And then over time, you can start to raise prices as you add more value. But upgrade the more, this is where you're able to maybe go beyond your base use cases. Maybe you have new jobs that you can solve for. Maybe there's a new extension of a use case that you could not go further. You broke through that. You can solve and upgrade the experience through the premium plans or as an add-on. You have both options. And then you have the unlock the new. This is where it's a whole new game, maybe a new TAM, new user, entirely new use case, and those you can charge separately as a standalone. You can start incorporating different usage-based models, et cetera. So the idea behind these three is just to give you the flexibility. It doesn't always have to be built in. It doesn't always have to be a standalone. You have three different options and let the experience guide you. Because in reality, when it comes to pricing, you're really pricing the experience, not the product, okay? So let me give you a few examples of that before we get to the third one. The first one is Slack. Many of you probably use Slack today. I used to get this pop up all the time. Please upgrade to our Slack AI. We will save you 103 hours. I don't know how it would save me 103 hours, but the idea wasn't compelling enough, never signed up. So what does Slack do? That pop-up went away, and they incorporated it into their Business Plus plan and raised the price 25%. Not 5%, not 10%, 25%. They built it in there. It's a really core foundational part of what they do now. On the upgrade side, this is a little bit of a different move. This is ClickUp. Okay, so ClickUp decided they're not going to do credits and they're not going to incorporate it in. They're going to go a different path. They're going to actually create this AI brain and make it an add-on. It is an add-on and it is a premium. And you'll notice the premium here is $28, which is 4 times more than the $7 average for their user. And I said, wow, that's a pretty aggressive move. So I called up the head of pricing at ClickUp. He's a friend of mine. And I said, is this actually working? Like this $28 plan? And what he said shocked me. So the punchline is, it is working. But if you want to find out more and why, come see me later. And I'll tell you what he said. All right, cliffhanger, okay? The third one here is unlock. The unlock piece is one of the most compelling. The darling intercom, they went ahead and decided to go down the path of resolutions. It's working nicely for them, but not only is it part of their whole platform, they could sell this Fin AI agent outside of that. So just the other day, I was chatting with the CPO of Pendo. She's fantastic, and I was talking to her, and she goes, yeah, I actually use Fin, but we don't actually buy intercom. We have a whole different help desk system, but we use Fin in our call center. That is competitive advantage. All right, so those are 3 examples there. I'm going to move to my third and final, I would say, framework to use. I call this Say Hi to Hybrids. This is all about charging for the right thing, not the wrong thing. All right, so when it comes to hybrids, I see that there's a lot of confusion around what constitutes work. And work by the system. Work is changing. It's different now. It's not just somebody behind a screen typing away. Systems can do things autonomously. And work looks like conversations now. It looks like approved emails or transactions or tasks completed. It's usually some unit you can measure and some state. Again, like transactions authorized or package completed. It's something like that. And the systems are now much more responsible for doing it. And you can see here a collection of examples of all those innovative experimentations that they're doing. But then the idea behind it is that the only way to charge? Well, this is a simple basic one here about charging based on who's doing the work, the person or the product, okay? If the person is still the center of the universe doing all the work, then there's still some avenues for seat, flat, think of like Notion, think of Figma, think of Slack, things like that. But when you think of the products that are doing all the work, like a Snowflake, or products that are just taking the human completely out of the loop, well then consumption-based, and even potentially going all the way to the finish line with outcome-based become options as well. But what I'm seeing here is that it's kind of still, people are involved, the systems are automating things, and it's kind of both. And that's where hybrids come in, right? You're seeing both product and person working together side by side, and this is where it will be the dominant model over the next couple years as we make the shift. So how do we break down hybrids? Because you probably have read about them, you've probably seen them on LinkedIn, and maybe have read a few things, but no one's actually telling you how to create the hybrid. So I wanted to give you a framework for how do we think about hybrids, how do you assemble one, how do you put it together, okay? I call this BAM. And BAM stands for base, allowance, and meter. These are the 3 layers of a hybrid, for any hybrid. And then I have 5 dominant models. All right, I'll walk you through briefly. So the 3 layers, you have your base. Think about this as like your core functionality, your services, all the key things there, your platform. That's your base. And then you have your allowance. These are like entitlements, volumes, thresholds, things like that. And then you have your meters. So these are your pricing metric. This is the thing you charge for. This is where a lot of the risk and where it gets really slippery, okay? So those are your 3 layers, and let me step you through the 5 models real quick. The first one is the access tiers. This is not known much as a hybrid per se, but if you think about it, they're only using one layer, which is mainly complexity within tiers. So think about, again, going back to Notion or Slack or Granola or Fathom or any of these others. They have a good, better, best model typically, maybe more. And what they're doing is they're layering in low complexity AI functionality in the early lower tiers, and then some more advanced stuff in the higher tiers, right? And they're able to manage through that. They're also using a fair usage policy to watch out for any dangerous usage throughout their population. So it's still layered across different tiers, but the flat plus unit is where things get interesting. Flat plus unit is your standard fixed plus variable. Now you're getting some usage into the mix. But oftentimes, it's just a flat fee, sometimes a platform fee or a per user fee, and then it's a unit charge after that. Intercom, great example. $99 per agent, and then it's 99 cents per resolution. That's an example of flat plus unit. And then you have flat plus limit plus unit, the proverbial 3-part tariff. And many of you here can actually, you know what a 3PT or 3-part tariff is. But the idea here is now you have some allocation and entitlement in the middle. And this is where things get really interesting, but can also get very complex. You can allowance the meter, but you can also put other limits in there to control the experience. Then you have a credit system. A lot of these are playing out today. They're taking the market by storm. You see credits there, credits everywhere. But the idea here is the credit is just another allowance type or another way to obfuscate the amount of volume. The idea here is now you're introducing things like rollovers and resets and policies around that. Okay, pay-as-you-go is pretty straightforward, as you pay by the drink. So these are your big 5 models. The 3 in the middle that I've highlighted are your standard like hybrids, what people are talking about. And it's different levels of base, allowance, and meter that they're using. But how do you take this home and make this actionable? I knew you would ask me that. So let me go and give you my thoughts on each one, okay? So what is each model best for, the watch out, and then some examples, okay? The access tier, really, if you have core workflow, assistance, productivity apps, things like that, you want to make sure that you stay in that lane, but watch out for margin compression, right? Because you're not metering and there's not much usage in the equation, if you're not careful with what they're able to do and what they're allowed to do, you will get burned. So watch out. So access tier, but is the simplest form. Then you have the flat plus unit. I like these for AI that can independently solve problems. A lot of agents are falling into this bucket as well. Again, a base fee, a flat fee, or something like that, and then some per outcome or per unit charge. Just make sure you pick the right outcome. That's the key there. And then you have your flat limit unit. Again, I think this is the most common model out there. You have some fee, you have some included usage or some included volumes, and then you have something that happens if you use it all. That's the danger zone, by the way, and that's where complexity can come in. Credit-based systems, I think I've seen work really well with PLG, but credit-based systems are something that, again, require a lot of infrastructure and thought. If you can explain what a credit is, then don't do a credit-based system. It's got to be super obvious. Think of Audible, great credit example. I know exactly what a credit means. All right, so just make sure that you're implementing something folks can understand, and then pay as you go, again, mostly for infrastructure, something you're calling. Be very careful not to get pulled into a commoditization. All right, so those are the big 5 and how to use each one and the gotcha for each one and examples. Use it as a thinking tool with your team. All right, so just to wrap up, 2 more slides. I wanted to make sure that this concept of psychological safety comes in. So if the more we pull usage into the equation, the more folks get nervous about predictability and what am I going to spend and this thing going to go over my budget and flashbacks of those AT&T bills that kind of came in and completely shocked you, right, when grandma called you on Friday. So the point here is this 3P framework will help you think about psychological safety as you incorporate more usage. Predict your usage, prevent surprises, and then protect them if they do go over, all right? So tools to estimate usage. I think for those that are thinking about moving deeper and deeper into usage-based pricing, you should be able to monitor that out of the gate. And monitor, by the way, not when they overuse their allotment, but make sure that they can see exactly where they're going. Prevent. So this one easy way to do this is to match the usage period with the reset period. So for example, month to month resets monthly, or an annual contract or reset annually. Reduces a lot of noise. And then your protect. So these are things like maybe I can go over, but let's cap that overage, or let's cap how far I can go. So that way your upside or your exposure is limited, right? So things like that you can do, true forward versus true up. And that way you roll them into the next contract because of their overage usage. So things like that can really help make usage a lot more effective in your model. Okay? So big step forwards here. Please take the spam cheat sheet. You can take the real framework. You can take the usage, a usage-based framework, and look at this with your team. All you have to do is sit down, take 30 minutes, and run through the chart and say, which hybrid actually makes the most sense for us, and why? And then go through that conversation and see where it lands. The idea is you should be getting paid the more work your product does, and you should be making it safe for all your customers to adopt over time and scale. All right? Is that a reasonable ask for everybody? I'll sweeten it up. So if you do this and you go through this with your team, DM me on LinkedIn. I'll chat with you about it. All right? If you do it. But you got to do it. Well, we'll say the first 3, actually, because I don't have as much time. So the first 3, reach out to me if you do it. I'm happy to walk you through and talk to you about it. All right? So to bring it all together, your value's framed too low. Sell the help, not the hype. If you feel like the packaging is too complicated, T's, please, and C's. And then lastly, if you're charging for the wrong thing, say hi to hybrids. Right? Thank you very much.